I've been in the nonprofit space for over 10 years now. And I literally had a young man say, Mr. Nathan, you're the first ever black male teacher I had in 7th grade. I had to find a solution to this big problem. And so I started my nonprofit in 2014 that same day. And on social media, people are like, how do you start a nonprofit? How do you actually write grants? Like, how do you do these things? And I was giving the information for free. Cause I'm like, I'm just gonna be a resource to individuals. And come to find out, like, it was this thing called being a coach and consultant.
There is this misconception out there when it comes to nonprofits. A lot of people think that, they shouldn't have a nonprofit, but there's so many benefits of having a for-profit and a nonprofit.
Yeah. Instead of paying some of my profits every quarter to Uncle Sam, why not donate this money and reallocate it to my own nonprofit foundation? And then I can push the money back out to the community.
It sounds like it's so much work. It sounds like it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Where do I start? Welcome to another episode of Access Granted. I am your host, Coach K, but I am here today with somebody that's just next level, killing it in the nonprofit space. My brother, always one phone call away, Blake, the nonprofit guy.
Good?
Thank you for being here.
Most definitely. Anytime you call, I'm coming.
Absolutely. I know it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But I think you show up that way just in general, right? Which is why your nonprofit is taking off, right? We're talking about 10 years of success. And I just want to give the people just a little bit about nonprofits. Talk about you and your business and your brand, but share what you do and how you are adding value in the nonprofit space.
Yeah, so Blake Nathan, first name, last name. People always say, which goes first? Blake is my first name. Nathan is my last name. I've been in the nonprofit space for over 10 years now. So my journey started when I was a classroom teacher, teaching middle school. And I literally had a young man say, Mr. Nathan, you're the first ever black male teacher I had in 7th grade. I'm like, dude, you went from 1st grade, 2nd grade, all the way to 7th grade. I'm the first black male teacher you had. And he was like, yeah, Mr. Nathan, like that is. I'm like, how many young boys had the same story as my students? So I was like, you know what? I had to find a solution to this big problem. And so I started my nonprofit in 2014 that same day. It's called the Educate Me Foundation. So our ultimate goal is to recruit, develop, and retain more black teachers because black men don't represent 2% of the national teaching workforce. And so there's kids every single day, doesn't matter if it's Chicago, Atlanta, LA, New York, they don't see an equal representation of themselves in the classrooms. And so been doing this for 10 years. And then around 2015 to 16, I wrote my first ever grant. And then I actually got a $172,000 grant from the state of Indiana to do STEM teacher recruitment. So I was a STEM teacher, and literally my story was morphing into my nonprofit because my first grant that I got was a STEM teacher recruitment grant. And so I was like, wow, this is cool. And on social media, people are like, how do you start a nonprofit? How do you actually write grants? Like, how do you do these things? And I was giving the information for free. Cause I'm like, I'm just going to be a resource to individuals. And come to find out, it was this thing called being a coach and consultant. I'm just a classroom teacher. I'm never thinking oh, you can be a teacher outside these 4 walls and actually be in the digital space. And so around 2019 to 2020, right before the pandemic happened, I started my for-profit business. I was like, I'm gonna start coaching people around nonprofits, literally show them from beginning to end, how you can form your nonprofit, how you structure your nonprofit, how you actually get money to support and sustain your nonprofit. And then 2024, 4 or 5 years later, I'm still here, literally helping people grow their nonprofit, scale their organizations, sustain them.
And we appreciate you. Yeah. You are always right there, always my go-to when it comes to the nonprofit space. There is this misconception out there when it comes to nonprofits, right? And a lot of people think that, they shouldn't have a nonprofit, and they fear nonprofits, and they think that the only option is an LLC. But there's so many benefits of having a for-profit and a nonprofit, especially if you have a mission to just make a change, make an impact, and give back. But talk about that, because you share a lot of value on social media, how your nonprofit can still have a fee for service, how your nonprofit still can, have a salary. You get paid a salary. So talk about just a couple different things, or a couple of key concepts on why I should have a nonprofit and why it would be beneficial for me as a business owner to have both, maybe a for-profit and a nonprofit.
I always say this: if you are making money and you are making sustainable living, all your bills are paid, you need to have a nonprofit. Because one, if you're a W-2 or 1099 employee or 1099 contract worker, you need to have some type of tax benefit. and that you can donate that money to your nonprofit organization. So people have private foundations, family foundations, like the Walton Foundation. Now, you may not be a billionaire like, the Waltons, but you may be making $100,000 plus in the annual salary. And like, hey, I got a tax bill I got to pay every year. So maybe I need to create my own 501c3 foundation as a family foundation. Now, my entrepreneurs and my business owners also think about creating nonprofits. Main reason because think about every corporate company that's a Fortune 500 entity. They're creating nonprofits for one reason: corporate responsibility, which is a big buzzword. They want to give back to the community, but they also like, you know what? Instead of paying some of my profits every quarter to Uncle Sam, why not donate this money and reallocate it to my own nonprofit foundation, and then I can push the money back out to the community. So now they're thinking like, you know what? If I don't, not saying they don't trust the government or trust the IRS, but they feel like they may not have the same corporate responsibilities that we're really invested in. It may be around global warming. It may be around food securities. It may be around education. And so these corporate entities like, you know what? I need to create a foundation to go alongside my nonprofit organization. My for-profit entity. If I'm a business owner right now, I don't care if you were in cosmetology, doing haircuts, doing youth programs, Airbnb, Turo, like you're making money. You need to create a nonprofit as well, because you want to. That's the easiest, safest, and quickest way to save money on taxes. But now also, holiday season's coming up. People are like want to do turkey giveaways, toys giveaways, but it's like you're doing it under your for-profit entity, so you're not even reaping the benefits of being I call it philanthropist. Like you're really giving back to your community. You're like giving these kids and this community hope, but you're not even killing two birds with one stone. Like giving back to the community, but also getting the tax benefits. And so I always say, it's not really which one I should do first, the nonprofit or for-profit. But you're in a for-profit space right now, in your LLC, you definitely need to think about, and you're sustainable and you're making profit shares, like you need to think about like, what do I need to do next? And the nonprofit should be like the first thing you think about.
Okay, I love that. So Blake, where do I start? Right? Yeah. I want to do this nonprofit. I see you and Coach K, y'all talk about it online all the time, but where do I start? It sounds like it's so much work. It sounds like it takes a long time. They're going to monitor how I spend my money. Yeah. Where do I start?
I'm glad you said that, like monitor how you spend your money. I always say this, only people that really care about how you spend your money is people that are probably doing bad business.
Yes.
Like your books are not in order. Your operationally is not put in place. But I always say this, like nonprofit is public information. Like I can go to anybody's information on the website and see like how much money you brought in last year, where you putting your money out to, like via grants, donors, even sponsors, like who you're investing your money into in the community. But the process is not really hard. I think that's like the misconception, because LLCs are so quick. Like you can register your LLC on the Secretary of State right now, and 3 days later you have a business. Go get an EIN, boom, you're in business. Well, a nonprofit, it's the same process actually. Like I think people are misunderstood. Like there's a nonprofit and there's a tax exempt nonprofit. A nonprofit is the same way we go register an LLC on the Secretary of State. Of course, you need a board of directors, which is the most thing people like really get hung up on. Is like, how do I find 2 other people to be on my board? Like trustworthy people. And it's like your family member could be one person that can actually do work, but also people in your network. Like find one other person in your immediate network that you feel like I trust them. They believe in my mission. They believe in my vision, and they believe in me as a leader. And that's your board members. It's the same. Now you got your paperwork done with the Secretary of State. The hardest part that people really feel like is like the most difficult thing is getting an exempt. Mm-hmm. I want to be federally exempt from taxes. That means when the money you make every single year and income you generate, you don't want to pay Uncle Sam. So that's the benefit of being a tax exempt nonprofit. The donations you raise, the fee for service models you incorporate, the sponsors, the grants that you receive, you're not paying taxes on any of that income. Now, there's a certain document you have to do, but if you come through us or any professional lawyer, like they can be able to do that document for you to get you a federal exempt from federal taxes.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned earlier that you received at one time $172,000. Is that the largest grant you received at one time?
The largest grant in a year, like I have multi-year grants of like $400,000, but that's like over a 2-3 year span. The largest grant I just got was this January actually, was $375,000 in 1 year.
Wow.
And we have to spend the money within a year.
Wow.
So like that's how grants are. Like you get a big lump sum, but you got to spend the money within that fiscal year.
Yeah, my largest at one time was $146,000. So I'm not there yet, right?
Hey, no,
But I've received multiple grants, but just one lump sum. But I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs and people that are over organizations as well, we see this large sum of money that comes in our account, and it's very hard to stay on track and make sure that we are aligned with our mission and using it within our business. It's a mindset, right? You got to have the right mindset, which is why I teach this information. I don't just tell you to go apply for grants. I make sure you have the right mindset and the right resources to make sure your business can scale and grow. But talk about that, because I know you have a lot of people that come to you and say, Blake, I want access to grant funding. And then when I get it, I say I'm going to use it for my business, but I really want to go to Dubai on a shopping spree, right? So what does that look like? And what's the importance of just making sure you stay on task?
Yeah, I say this, man, like, and I don't talk about anybody I see in the social media, but like, this is why it's so important to have the right people on your team, like a CPA, accountant, you board of directors. These are people that's overseeing you as a leader. That's misappropriating funds, that's misusing funds that are either maybe federally granted to a state agency that you're receiving that grant dollars for. That's like literally jail time. And so we've seen celebrities like literally that are not overseeing their nonprofit, but hire people and put them in place, but like literally are going to jail and serving time because they entrusted somebody to use their grant dollars. I always say this, like, I'm very big on the budget. Like, I'm like, what is the budget? And that's one thing about the grant writing process, is like, in order to secure grant dollars, any grant dollars, the funder wants to know how you plan on spending that money. And the one beautiful thing I like, and it's tedious when you get the money, is like you have to do these things called grant reports. Like, you're telling the funder, where did I spend this money? How much did I spend this money? And this could be quarterly, this can be biannually, this can be yearly, that you're telling the funder, like, okay, this is where you're spending the money and how much you're spending. This is where you need checks and balances, because as the owner, nonprofit is not owned by anybody. As a CEO or executive director of your nonprofit, you have to really understand, I can't just move the money where I want to move the money. I should have checks and balances. You have a treasurer that sits on your board. You should probably have an accountant that's on your leadership team. So you, as the executive director or CEO, before somebody swipes a card, before you make a big purchase, you should get it approved first. And once it's approved, now you can move that money. Now, Dubai, it'd be crazy. unless, hey, and I would say this, there's some funds will allow you to use travel dollars. Now, we're not talking about international travel probably, but you'll tell the funder, like, hey, I plan on going to this conference, and maybe it's South by Southwest Educational Conference or a conference in California. I mean, we're in Atlanta, like Invest Fest. Like, you can actually include these conferences fees inside of your grant proposals as professional development or even gross personal development as a leader. And so now you're telling the funder, if I want to spend $3,000-$5,000 to go to these different conferences, then it's okay. But it won't be okay if you're using these funds for something that's not inside that grant proposal.
Yeah. We talked about all the time, or you talked about earlier, the importance of finding a problem and a solution to the problem. And I tell my community all day long, if you can do those two things, if you can find a problem within your community or within your industry and figure out how you can be a solution to the problem, it opens up the door for more opportunities, right? And that's what these funders, most of them want to know. What are you solving? Why should I give you the money? What impact are you making? And people think that means, going out and feeding the homeless or, building a house or whatever that looks like. But there are so many opportunities out there available for organizations and business owners, which is why I teach this. What type of systems do you have in place that have helped you over this 10-year time frame? Just make sure your nonprofit stays just in order, right? And organized, and that you are in compliance and growing your business and scaling it or your organization and scaling it to the next level.
I say this, probably my first 5 years, and honestly, it's probably 6 or 7. I didn't have any good systems. It was really bad. And I think that's where you kind of like go through growing pains. That's why a coach is so important or a mentor is so important. Because for me, like, I didn't have somebody like, I feel like the first of the party in the nonprofit space. For me, like, all my friends were creating LLCs. They were doing like for-profit stuff. And it was like, nobody really showed me like how to run and lead a nonprofit. And so for me was the last 3-4 years, I started putting like operation manuals. I started creating operations manuals. I started doing SOPs, like standard operating procedures. I told myself I want to give myself to 10 years to run my nonprofit. So like, I was already thinking like, when we get to 10 years, I'm thinking about succession planning. Like when I pass the baton to another CEO, like what would that look like? But for me, my big systems, a platform that I use every single day is Monday.com. Like it is a CRM, it is a project management, it is literally like dashboard. When you're like a CEO, like you want to look at a dashboard. You want to see like where we are financially, where we are systematically, where we are as far as different gaps that we need to fill. And so I'm in Monday every day, all day. We're setting up automations. We're doing all that inside of Monday. And another platform I always inside of is QuickBooks. Like I'm talking with my CPA because like we talking about 6-figure grants and like federally funded grants and state funded grants that sometimes will require an audit. You want to make sure you like really look into the numbers and trying to figure out like where do we cut like some dead money at, or we don't need to spend that, or also like if we want to hire people, like do we have the funds to do that? And so I'm in QuickBooks and Monday almost every day.
And a lot of people miss out on free services, right?
Yeah.
Because having a nonprofit, sometimes you get, like, I believe Monday's free. Monday's free. Google has a grant.
Google for nonprofits.
Google for nonprofits, where you can get free marketing and free services. So having that nonprofit piece opens up the door for a lot of free opportunities or discounted opportunities for your organization, and people miss out on that.
I would say like before I use all my nonprofit discounts, my like operational fees, like software, was like $3,000 to $5,000 a month.
Wow.
I cut that in the last 2 years, like $750, because I'm using my exemption status to like Monday.com. Like that was a fee every single month. Like think about how many users we use, like contract workers I bring on, myself. So like they get charged by seats, which seats are like users that have a login. So like Monday, I'm using their free plan. Google for nonprofits, $120,000 every year on Google ad spend. That's $10,000 that I was using probably somewhere else. Now I save myself $10,000 a month on ad spend just for Google for nonprofits.
That's dope. That's dope. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Listen, so I know recently you had to, and I don't want to say pause, right? But I know that you had to take on the role of being a full-time father, just because of things that happened after your daughter's birth, right?
Yeah, my daughter's,
So talk about that, and talk about just balancing both, just being, making sure you're there and showing up for your wife, and then making sure that you are just in the space of a full-time father in that role, but still balancing being an entrepreneur and showing up, because a lot of us didn't know. I didn't know, right? And I'm reaching out to you like, hey, Blake, what you doing? Come on, let's do this challenge together. But we had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. And I think a lot of times on social media, we don't share that side of our journey, but I think it's important sometimes because there might be somebody else out there that's going through similar challenges and just need that support.
Yeah, it was crazy because I had to, of course, ask my wife for permission to even share her story on social media. Like, she's not big on social media. Like, she don't want her page to be private and all that stuff. She got like 1,000 followers. I'm like, if you give me your blessing, let me show your story. Because I feel like your story should be shared with the masses. Like, people need to know your testimony. But like we had our third daughter, and she struggled with cardiomyopathy. It's like heart failure, and it's prevalent, I guess, in Black women over the age of like 35.
Wow.
And so literally around 3 months, she was just fatigued. Now she had traumatic, right? To my emergency C-section for our child's birth. And then of course, like from a woman, like you're trying to heal up, you're trying to get, you got the fourth trimester that I learned about. And I didn't know, again, as a man, I didn't know what a fourth trimester was, postpartum. And I'm like, okay, I see the emotions now, but I'm like, it's our third one. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's just like regular postpartum, but like she was really tired. And then so we end up going to the doctor, and then literally like she had a steroid injection because she has lupus and she has another autoimmune disorder. And so I'm like, you're not looking right today. Like, you're not looking right at all. And so end up calling the ER. And of course with the baby, I can't take a newborn baby to the ER. They don't let you take a baby back doors to the ER rooms. So I had to leave her there and go back home. And then I get a text, but as soon as I like lay my head down, probably an hour later, I get a text from her like, I think I had a heart attack. And I said, I had to get my girls up. We like took them to my mom's house. I rushed to the hospital, and then like and I can tell like she just looks so much different than when I dropped. Like she went in the ambulance at ER, and I'm like, okay. So come to find out, they're trying to figure out what was going on with her. So she had cardiomyopathy. I remember the day, June 12th. Like people don't even notice. I'm still like on social media, I'm posting and all that stuff. June 12th, the doctor said, we don't think she's gonna make it through the next morning. And so I'm like, I didn't feel it in my spirit. Like my father-in-law was there, my mother-in-law was there, my mom was there, and we were at the hospital. And I'm like, I just need to take a walk. So I literally I walked around the hospital. I'm like, and I just asked the guy, like, if she's gonna go today, let me hear her voice, or like tell me that she's leaving. And it was just quiet. I didn't hear nothing. I said, okay, let me get my emotions back together. And I went to go talk to my mom and stuff. And I said, she's gonna be all right. But it was like literally a journey. She went from that surgery to another heart. She had to have an impella, like heart surgery procedure, her gut surgery, because they felt like her organs were failing. And so literally it wasn't until like last week she finally got her feeding tube removed. Wow. So like I was like, I'm a stay-at-home working dad running my nonprofit, my for-profit. We got the new baby. I got 2 other kids that's in school, and then I'm a caregiver on top of that. So like I'm literally like changing her bags, helping her use the bathroom, getting in the shower, like the things that we kind of take for granted. I'm like, I gotta be here like helping her out. Now luckily we have my mother-in-law's here too, and my family's here too as well. But like when the baby wakes up at 3:00, she can't roll over and help the baby. I'm over there changing diapers and all this stuff. And I know it was so painful because like she's just a super involved mom. Like outside of her title as of being a wife, like the next title is probably being a mom. And so like as you're a mom, so you already know. Right. Somebody said you can't like hold your baby, or like you just like, gave them birth, like you'd be like, okay. So in this summer, I was like, I can't work. Like I gotta maximize my time. It was like 2:00 in the morning. I'm trying to record content when the baby's asleep, or I'm triggering my emails to go out in the morning to different vendors and partners. So it seems like I'm like responding in the daytime. Like I'm triggering like 8:30 to 1 p.m. And then like I'm like, okay, like if I get a schedule, like we're doing a challenge, I push my challenge back like multiple times. I'm like, there's no way I could do this challenge. Like mentally, I'm not there. But I told myself, like, I talked about this 10-year thing. I was preparing for something, and I didn't know it was this, like maybe 6 months ago. Because I was like, I'm like, educate me. I've been doing this nonprofit CEO role for like 10 years. I want to do something new, something fresh, but I need to put some systems in place before I pass the torch to somebody. If I want to like really pass this my baby over to somebody else, I got to have some things in place. So luckily, I put myself like some systems and SOPs. I brought in a good set of team members on, like right before this even happened. So literally, and my baby was born. So I was trying to do like my own FMLA, because I was like, okay, because again, I've worked for myself, so we don't get that privilege, like putting down anything, So I was like, you know what? Let me just take 2 weeks off. Let me tell my team, hey, I'm gonna take 2 weeks off, and then but I'm working from home, so my 2 weeks is still like pulling the phone out, texting somebody. But luckily enough, I put some systems in place. And honestly, as bad as this summer was, me and my wife talked about, like, it could be a lot worse. Like I told her, like, in one of my posts, like, I'd rather be a caregiver than a widower, and also I'm like, I've been making, our God has really been blessing us so much, like financially, like bills being paid, my kids still in school, like roof over our heads. So I'm like, I can't really complain. Like, and she's like, you know what? Like, I can't complain because I'm still here. I get to see my daughters, and it's still a battle, every single day. Yeah. She even said like she may not get back to her normal self till like next year. And so we're still just like every single day just fighting and going. But like, it makes it a little bit easier when you have like money coming in, bills are paid. You got a good support system, and then coming like doing here, this is like therapy for me. Like I get a chance to like get out the house and be around something else. So
yeah, that's important. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that. So there are so many entrepreneurs who they just look on social media and they just they think it looks good, and being an entrepreneur is exciting, and that's what I want to do because it's the freedom, and they don't know the challenges and things that we face on the back end. So I just appreciate you sharing that. I mean, literally had no idea because you showed up on social media or anytime I called, right? Any challenge. How did you do it?
Yeah. I say this, how I did it, I think I was just stuck on the fact that like my situation, it was a guy, I don't know, I think his name is Terrence. He's a caregiver in Florida as well. And he's like his wife, I forgot what happened to her, but like literally she's bedside. He has to be like always with, but every time I turn on social media, I see his feed. I'm like, he's just spirited. He's thanking God. Like he's got good energy. That's why I say people don't realize like sometimes you get on social media, you see some good stuff, right? Like you see some positive stuff. Like, and I'm like, man, I just love how he's like loving on his wife and loving, like he's always in a good spirit and a good mood. So like, even when I had like my bad days, I'm like, man. And then also too, what got me through is like my daughters. Like I'm like, as a man, you gotta, you're the leader, you're the provider, you're the protector. So like they're looking at you to see how you are navigating this situation. And again, it's tough for them seeing their mom like that. So for me, it's like I want them to understand like, oh, mommy's gonna be all right. She's gonna be okay. Like, and now she's home, it's a lot better. Cause like in the summertime, cause she was in the hospital for, 45 plus days. And so just imagine like every night you have a 4 or 5 year old like coming to the bedroom saying like, where's mommy? And I'm like, oh, she's, you trying to, but eventually they came to find out like, oh, she's sick and, she'll be okay. But what's getting me through every single day when I'm teaching, I'm like in the zone. Like when I'm like talking about nonprofit stuff, I'm in the zone. Like I'm a educator by heart. So like when I'm like in front of my class, my community, or I'm pulling up to this stuff, like this is like, oh, this is like refreshing. Like this is like, everybody needs an outlet. And my therapist said, Blake, you got to have an outlet because there's no way you can be all the things you're doing right now and like not have something where you're just like unplugging, like put the phone down. So I be like going to Falcons games on Sundays. Everybody knows that. Like, they see my social media.
I was gonna bring up your Falcons.
Yeah. So I'm in the Falcons game on Sunday, win or lose. I'm in there. That's been right now. It's been okay because we've been winning more than we're losing. So that's my Sundays, and then I watch games on football. Georgia Bulldogs on Saturday. Okay. So if I can get through the first 5 days of the week, Saturday and Sunday is kind of my little days where I can just like unwind, relax a little bit. I don't care if I'm holding my baby in the arm, watching TV. If I can get to Saturday and Sunday, I'm good.
That's good. That's good. I love that. So this summer, you took how many students on a college tour? Man,
we took about almost close to 100, like 97 students.
Oh wow!
And so that's we've been doing these HBCU college tours since that was the first thing I ever did for my nonprofit was the HBCU college tour.
Really?
Yeah. And the ultimate goal was that like it was a marketing strategy and recruitment strategy. Like if HBCUs produce over 50% of the Black teacher workforce, and we need to encourage more young people to go to HBCUs, hopefully the ultimate goal will get these same young people that go to HBCUs become teachers. That was the mindset behind it.
Wow.
And not every kid that goes on our tour wants to be a teacher or an educator, and that's perfectly fine. But like if we can get young people to pursue a post-secondary education, like that's a win for us. Now, a super win would be like they'll become a teacher, and that'll be a super win for us. But like, we had a bus come out of Memphis, Nashville, Indianapolis, Charlotte, Atlanta, in Cincinnati, Ohio. So
I had somebody from Nashville. They posted their daughter like getting on the bus. I was like, oh, I know Blake.
Yeah. So we already gearing up for 2025, man, for our college tour. So we're gonna have 3 more, but we're gonna do Indianapolis, Nashville, and Atlanta this year. And we're gonna have people that fly in from different, because we always people will fly in for our tours now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So high school.
Okay. Yeah. Gotta be since it's the spring. Got to be 9th through 11th grade. You come, but it's like an all inclusive trip for high school kids. Like we pay for they pay for it with because it is a fee for service, so the parents have to pay. Or a lot of kids get sponsored. Like I'll probably say about 85 to 90% of our kids are fully sponsored, paid for.
Wow.
And so we probably like 10 to 15% of kids that like their parents pay out of pocket, but we don't ever have to worry about a financial burden or barrier for people to sign up. But like you talking about hotels, and we stay at some night like Hilton's, Marriott's, 3 meals a day. We let them eat lunch on campus so they can get that culture experience. And then we usually try to find like some type of local establishment, like not like a big chain in every city we go to.
Yeah.
So if there was coming to Atlanta, we'll pull to like Slutty Vegan or like Dave's Cheesecake. Dave's
giving back,
pouring back
into the community.
So
yeah.
And we always have to give them some type of culture experience. So we've been to like HBCU homecoming games before, professional basketball games. They got a chance to do all those different things in the tour.
Oh, that's amazing. So if I wanted to do something like that, what does it look like for the average entrepreneur who has the vision to, give back to the community or to take people on college tours or just educate our youth? Where would I start? Of course, getting the nonprofit and structuring it the correct way. But what other advice do you have for me for funding to help me support that mission?
I always say this, like you mentioned this earlier in the conversation, like people want to do like the give backs, like the turkey giveaways and feed the homeless. And I always say those are like one-off type of things, right? It's like from a funder perspective, like how do I see my ROI? Like it's not a return of investment, it's like a return of impact. Like how do I ensure if I give you 20,000, 50,000, how many lives will you be able to impact? Not just one time, like just feeding them, but like Are you going to clothe them? Are you going to help them with the workforce development? Are you going to help them with housing? Because if someone's homeless, mental health support, unpacking some trauma. So I tell people, like, the first thing you want to do if you really want to think about having a nonprofit and then think about serving your community, it's 4 different things you can offer. You can offer a program, provide a service, have an initiative, or you're going to do like some type of membership-based organization. So you think about, that's a group here in Atlanta called Ladies Who Golf, right? And they're membership-based. They just literally showing women, black women, how to golf, right? And they go to different country clubs. That's a membership-based organization. But most of the funding are in programs. Like if you're talking about 4-week programs, 8-week programs, year-long programs, where if you have a program and you're providing that program to a direct participant, either as youth serving or community-based, that is where the money's at. So you have a curriculum that you're put in place. You have a target audience. These are all buzzwords that funders want to hear. Like, what are you teaching? Who are you teaching? How long is it lasting? That's that program timeline, right? So, and the last thing people want to know is the budget. Like, how much is it really going to cost you? And if you're an entrepreneur or a aspiring nonprofit leader, you're like, okay, Blake, how do I get the $50,000? This is where the fee structure comes in, the revenue streams come in. Like, you can offer any in donations. We even talked about that. Like, people really donate and sponsor people to go through your programs. And so now you're like, I got donations money coming in. I got sponsors coming in. I got these big grants coming in. Oh, this is the game. This is how I make the money. And like, now we have something that's sustainable. And we just do the same programs over. I've been doing the same, some of my programs for 10 years for sure. And I don't change it because now I got the data. I can make different pivots, adjustments to it, and now go pursue more money because now people see the track record that we have.
I love that. That is amazing. That's a whole gem. We can really end the podcast. We just gave them a whole mastermind.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So another one of my strategies, and I actually picked this up from you, right? The LinkedIn play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned it in our very first class that we did together. And I always tell people, have a LinkedIn. We think about social media and branding our business online, but people forget that LinkedIn play and reaching out to sponsors and CEOs and donors and organizations on LinkedIn for funding. So I thank you for that, Jim, right? Yeah. Because I've been able to make some solid connections. I haven't got approved from a grant on there yet, but
it's coming.
It's coming, but I'm not consistent with it like I should be. Yeah. But I've made some solid and powerful connections. So as an entrepreneur, right, the LinkedIn opportunity, not only just to advertise and brand your organization, but making network or connecting and networking. What are some opportunities for me to get access to funding on LinkedIn? Man,
I always say this, and this is, y'all can write this down now. You may want to pause the video and take some notes because I'm about to give you my LinkedIn play. So I always say this. Instagram's for the show, LinkedIn's for the dough. Like, Instagram is literally like a highlight reel. You're showing all the positive things you're doing. Sometimes it's testimonials and, you're showing the bad things that may happen to you, so making sure like you're real. But LinkedIn is like the professional network. Like, the person that's over a corporate responsibility for those Fortune 500 companies is on LinkedIn. The person that's the director of grants and philanthropic giving is on LinkedIn. And the easy things for you to do is like literally, people always say, Blake, how you find sponsors? LinkedIn. Like, I can literally type in Capital One, director of sponsorships or director of sponsors, and boom, that information is right there. Let's say I'm in DC and I want to find somebody, a DC sponsor. You can literally do a filter with the locations. Like, you can literally say, okay, I want to find the sponsors in DC, because guess what? You have people that are regional. You have people that are like state specific. And so you may feel like, okay, well, if I find someone in Georgia, it's not going to be applicable to California. Like, LinkedIn will let you filter that system. Now, how I actually find grants, write this down. There's a search. There's literally a search button at the very top of the screen. And all I do is type in grant opportunities and grant applications, and then I see the list of the grants, and I can do that filter too as well, by the city or by the state. And now I can say this: it actually worked for me. So I actually received $100,000 grant. Now, of course, I had to write the grant and win the grant, but the way that I even found out about the opportunity and find the individual sitting on that grant opportunity was on LinkedIn. So I actually set up a meeting with that person. Now I would say 15 to 30 minutes. These people don't have a long time to talk with you. You want to be respectful of their time. And also, like, hey, you know what? You're going to make yourself seem busy as a CEO and founder. Like, I only got 15, 30 minutes as a CEO. I know you only got 15, 30 minutes as a director of grants. Let's just have a quick little Zoom coffee. Let me tell you what I want to do or what you guys plan on offering. And then you can kind of have the conversation go like that. But I always use LinkedIn for I want to make those organic connections, because Instagram is kind of difficult because you don't know what professional title they have. They're going to respond to the DM. You will probably have an 85 to 90% friend or request acceptance rate on LinkedIn. Like literally, if you ask somebody to be your friend on LinkedIn, they look at your profile and they see your profile is professional, it's up to date. They're 9 times out of 10 will accept your request, and then you can actually message them. And usually my first thing I always say, like, hey, I'm glad we got the chance to connect. I see we're kind of in the same network or the same industry. I love to come and just learn more about what you're doing. I want to share what I'm doing, and boom, that's it.
Love that. Love that. Ooh, that's if you're not writing this down and taking notes, you run it back, write it down, take notes, because he just told you how you can find funding right in your back door. There's some grant applications now that won't even let you hit submit without a LinkedIn website or a LinkedIn account. So LinkedIn is the gold mine for funding opportunities. I tell people that all the time, and I kind of grab that gem from you. So I appreciate that. So do you have a done for you service? If I wanted to start a nonprofit, if I'm the entrepreneur and I'm just like, my hands are full, Blake, can you and your team just help me start my nonprofit and get access to capital and funding?
Yeah, I always say this, like, when people start nonprofits, especially entrepreneurs, like their schedule's already crazy enough. They're wearing many hats, and most of us are like still in that kind of like beginning phase. Like we're probably 2 or 3 years, or we're just trying to do like a proof of concept, but still making money. But we're like, okay, I want to do something else next. I want to give back. I'm making some money. I want to be a beacon of hope. I want to help invest back in my community. We do offer a done for you service. Like literally, it's our nonprofit founders program. So literally, we'll do your state registration. We'll do all your supporting documents to get you federally exempt. And so it's a form you do with the IRS called a 1023 application. So we do that form for you, and we pay all the fees from the fees that you pay us. So it's no additional fees. And I always say this too, entrepreneurs, you don't create a nonprofit that is going to compete with your lifestyle. Like if I am, again, doing hair, I'm not going to create a nonprofit around like urban gardening or childhood obesity. Like, I'm probably going to do something in my niche. Like maybe it's women empowerment or showing young girls how to do a skills or trade. Like I'm going to stay in that niche. And so one of the biggest, because you want to, as an entrepreneur, you want to look at your nonprofit as a additional revenue stream, especially as an entrepreneur. Like there's different ways to structure your nonprofit, but I always say, like, if you're an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, I want to give back, but I also want to get this grant money, Coach K. Like, how do I use my nonprofit to get grant money to have my for-profit? You need to look at your nonprofit additional revenue stream for your for-profit entity.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. I actually have a lot of pushback when I say that, right? Because my for-profit company was my childcare, and my nonprofit was the STEM-based education. So I seen a need, right? I started my childcare for selfish reasons. I needed affordable childcare, and then I needed something that had extended hours. So I started it for selfish reasons, but as I got into the space, I started figuring out what my competitors and the people around me were lacking, and it was the education, right? So I created like a STEM-based program. I didn't create the STEM-based program, but I wanted to make sure that my daycare had a STEM-based curriculum, which was my nonprofit. And so that's how we were able to open up the door for more funding. We just collaborated on opportunities to give us access to capital. And I have people on social media all day long, you can't do that. And you shouldn't collaborate. And your nonprofit and your for-profit shouldn't work together. I'm like, yes, they should, right? Right? So this is going to give us, we 2 different companies, 2 different entities who kind of share similar missions to reach a goal. And that's what we're doing. So
and I always say it's a company, there's plenty of companies out there, y'all, but I'm gonna give you a company model. There are people that have a for-profit entity that charge a fee for service, right? Have a program that charge a fee for service. Like to be a part of their program, it costs some money. I'm talking about a few $1,000s plus and then some. But then they're like, you know what, Coach K, I can't afford the $5,000. I can't afford the $10,000. But I need your coach. I need your mentorship. Like, do you have a scholarship program? You're like, no, I do have a scholarship program. But I'm not only going to give that scholarship through my nonprofit organization. You can apply through Coach K's foundation, where you can apply for a scholarship to go through my program. There's nothing different than a university doing that, where a university literally has a presidential foundation where they create a scholarship. People may say, well, Blake, the university is a nonprofit too. It's a scholarship, right? And I always tell people, like, if you are a for-profit entity, you want to feel like, how can I make these 2 partner together? Like your nonprofit, like it was a STEM program, but you probably wasn't charging your parents more money just to be a part of the STEM program.
Right.
But you was like, hey, I want to incorporate this curriculum into my school without charging my parents more money. So maybe if I go get a grant and then this grant will cover all the additional overhead, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. I tell people that all the time. I try to break it down. And most of your major athletes and celebrities, a lot of them have foundations and they have nonprofits for the tax benefit. You do a lot online and on social media. You talk about how athletes should have a nonprofit.
Yeah.
I have a question. At what point as an athlete should I start my nonprofit? If I'm in college, because we know that they're making a lot of money now in college, right, with different endorsements and things that they're receiving. So should I go ahead and start my nonprofit in college, or do I wait till I'm drafted and I have this multi-million-dollar deal? So when do you encourage me to start my nonprofit as an athlete?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I have some parents now that have these middle school phenoms. Like they're like going to be the next, and they have two of them. NIL has opened the game for the high school kid, even to like the middle school kid that's about to be in high school eventually. So I'm even now looking on social media. I'm talking with like recruiting agencies and NIL companies, because like these high school kids are getting 6-figure NIL deals. And so for me, it's like I'm telling parents, like, you need to set your nonprofit up now. We don't need to wait to college to set the nonprofit up. We can do it now in the high school. Now, it's a better benefit sometimes. And I say benefit, it's a better opportunity for the child or the athlete, because they're not 18 years of age yet. Most of them are under 18. So like to be your CEO or sit on your board for your nonprofit, you have to be over 18 years of age. So that's the only downfall to that. But like, we can always add you as a board member when you turn 18. You can now assume the role of CEO. But like most parents, like they're trying to protect their kids. They're trying to take their asset. And like, I'm like, hey, create you a nonprofit now. This NIL money that you're getting, donate 10%, 20% of this NIL money. Like put it away. Because guess what? One day when this season's over or your career may be over, you now can put this money away to the side. And now you can be putting yourself on a salary for X amount of years.
Okay.
So
yeah, I love that. So I should create and start my child a nonprofit, especially if I see if the goal is for them to be in NFL or NBA and they have the drive and the passion. Getting them a nonprofit just kind of sets that foundation. It's building the brand, but it's also going to help me on the tax side too if they're getting those 6- and 7-figure deals already. Wow. That is crazy.
And then think about this too, like that's even more endorsement deals, because now like think about certain brands, they're looking at like the character, they're looking at like, okay, like it's certain brands that want a well-polished, a well-rounded athlete. And they're like, okay, I see this person has a nonprofit, they're giving back to the community. Let's also give them an endorsement deal, and now this is now you're getting more money because now you got an endorsement deal from a certain, like, let's say you're a young kid and you're like, hey, I want to go out to play college for University of Georgia, and they're seeing like what you're doing on the field, but also off the field. And they're like, maybe if it's Dove Men, right? Maybe it's Old Spice that wants to come knock on your door and give you an endorsement deal because they're seeing what you're doing in the community through your own nonprofit.
This was good, bro. This is good. Listen, I don't know what else we can give them. This is a full, how much we supposed to charge for this?
Oh, man. Hey, I'm never gatekeeping, man. I tell people I'm never going to gatekeep. I'm going to give you all the information.
This was really, really good. So what's next for Blake? What's next for Blake? What's next for the nonprofit guy? What can we expect from you on social media? Because you show up.
I do. I try to, man. I try to. So next on for me, I'm starting a brand new nonprofit. So like I told myself, like I'm still running my current nonprofit. So like I'm wearing, again, I told you my story about my wife and my kids and got my own nonprofit. I'm still wearing a lot of hats, but I said, you know what? I want to like see what it's like to start a nonprofit from scratch again, because it's been so long. And I help people start nonprofits all day, every day. So I'm like, it can't be that much different than when I started in 2014, but it is. But so I'm starting a brand new nonprofit. I already have the name. It's already registered. And if people have been following me on social media, they've been seeing me post like every single day about what to do to start their own nonprofit. So it's called the Car Charity. And so my ultimate goal with this nonprofit is to, and I'm going to do at least 3 to 5 vehicles. I'm going to donate 3 to 5 vehicles to deserving families around Christmas time.
Wow.
And the ultimate goal for this is also like sell cars at a wholesale price. And so I'm gonna take the profits from these, again, fee for service model, y'all. I'm gonna take the profits from these car sales to buy more cars to donate them back out to the community.
So I can have a business or a nonprofit where I go out and I purchase vehicles wholesale. I can still sell those vehicles for whatever value. The profit goes back into my nonprofit, and you're going to take that profit and reinvest it back into
the organization.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Game changer.
So that's my new project I'm working on. I already got like because in Georgia you need to have a dealer's license. So I had to get an office space, but I'm gonna literally show people this entire process. Yeah.
So how do I get paid? I know there's a lot of people who have this question, right? So I'm starting this nonprofit. I'm going to do, funding wholesale, get vehicles wholesale and sell it for a profit. But how do I get paid? Because I want money too.
Yeah.
Right?
I always say this. So different from a for-profit, which in your for-profit, you should put yourself in a salary. I think people are just so used to like taking money off and just doing an owner's draw and like realize like you need to pay yourself a salary. Nonprofit is the same thing. So every year you should be creating an organizational budget. Like, and this is an assumption, like it's a budget, it's a projection over a 12-month span, like what are you planning on bringing in? So I always say, if you are going to be a $500,000 nonprofit, that's your budget, you're probably going to pay yourself between $50,000 to $100,000. I always say the rule of thumb to be compliant with the IRS, so people don't raise any red flags. When people like funders want to give you money, if you're so top heavy, that's a red flag. That means you're paying yourself too much money and you're not putting money back into your programs. So my rule of thumb is stay between 10 to 20% of your annual budget to pay your CEO. So if you're a $100,000 nonprofit, pay yourself $10,000. If you are a $1 million nonprofit, $100,000 to $200,000 annual salary. And I've got this backed up through national data. And so, and I always feel like this when I give people advice, like I want to make sure it's research based, but 10 to 20% annual salary. So now how do we get the money, Coach K? We go write a grant, or what I'm trying to do is I'm gonna sell some cars under my new nonprofit, and that's gonna be to my annual. That's gonna get me to my annual budget. And as a board, I always say this: your last thing, y'all, your board members have fiduciary responsibilities. As an executive director or CEO of your own nonprofit, that should not be your only responsibility. Meaning that, Coach K, you're the executive director, you go raise the $250,000 for the nonprofit. Well, no, I got you on my board to help me go raise the $250 alongside me, right? And so that's how you can pay yourself. Like, we have to make money, and I hate the word nonprofit at times, and I hate such a strong word, but like when people hear the word nonprofit, they hear the word no profit. And it's like, no, because you need to be a sustainable business, you have to have profits. So you don't dissolve your nonprofit and go out of business. Like the way you can serve people, you need a profit. So those are ways you can make some money.
Yeah.
Fee for service, grant sponsors, donations. And that's how you can pay yourself.
I got one more thing before I let you go.
Nah, let's go.
So you recently just gave out, or you just did a $5,000 grant, right? And as the person on the other side, right, the funder, what are you looking for in the companies and organizations that are applying? Who stands out to you? Who are you ready to give and eager to invest into as the funder?
I would say this. I always say reading is fundamental, and like the eligibility requirement is so important, right? So the first thing I was looking for is like, did they submit before the deadline? Did they follow the instructions? Like they submitted the required documents, because like some things were required. And then also I'm looking as far as like, did they also include like the things that weren't required? Like if you don't have a website, it wasn't a deal breaker, but if you have a website, guess what? That gives you more points. And so like, that's what funders looking for. Like if I put the applications side by side and I stack them up, if somebody has a website and someone doesn't, that's another point. If someone followed instructions, someone didn't, that's another point. If someone submitted on time and someone didn't. So I'm looking at like all those different things. And then I'm doing my own little due diligence and looking at the research. Like I'm looking at social media pages, seeing they have any social footprints. I'm looking at the actual submission, like what they submitted, they need the money for. And seeing like, again, I want the 5,000. Again, 5,000 is not going to make or break an organization, but sometimes that 5,000 can start and ignite an organization. And so I'm also looking at like as far as the need, and because our team, we can do our research. We know how to find your 990s, your tax return, because that was a requirement, like determination letter. We need your EIN. So we're going to look at those things and see like, man, if it's a nonprofit's already got 2 million, they probably don't need the 5,000. But like someone's under 50,000. They just started off last year, maybe. So those are kind of things that we're looking for. And that's why I say, too, every funder is different. Some funders want the more nonprofit that's more seasoned, have more years in the game, have, X amount of dollars than they've received before. There's some funders like, I want to support the grassroots mom and pops organizations that just started, that just need like a kickstart. And so I'm probably looking for that one that's like just need that kickstart, because I know that probably can take them a long. And you're looking for the impact, return of impact, like we talked about. Like absolutely. I want to see, if I gave this 5,000, what could you do with it?
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Any last piece of advice for the entrepreneurs or the people who want to start a nonprofit and they're just ready to take action?
I would say this, man. This is one of my phrases I would say, like, no money, no mission. There's no way that you're going to be able to fulfill the mission of your nonprofit. You do not have any money. There's also people in your community right now. There's a young child that needs your service. There's a parent that needs your service. There's someone that's going through trauma or mental issues that needs your service. And you are sitting right now watching this video. I'm like, Coach K, I don't know if I need to start my nonprofit yet. And I want these people that's watching right now to like take this call to action to start their nonprofits today. Because right now, the issues that are plaguing our community, the only people that really can solve it, it's not the government, it's not our political officials, it's really nonprofit organizations. And we look around all day, every day of all the grassroots, community-based nonprofit organizations that are creating the change. So we need more of them because we still got problems in our community.
Wow. Listen, you guys, I just gave you full access to show you how to start your nonprofit and fund your nonprofit. If you found value in this episode and you are ready to take action, I want you to click the link below. Make sure you subscribe, but share this information with at least 3 other people who could use this same service. Thank you for tuning into Access Granted.